Hello and welcome to Currency Transaction Report Simplified, presented by Compliance Simplified and bankandcumpliance.com. We are going to review when to file a CTR and how to complete the forms accurately and completely. Now let's jump right in. When do we file a CTR? Well, a currency transaction report must be completed for any transaction exceeding $10,000 in cash and must be filed within 15 days of the transaction. That's $10,000 and a penny or more. A reportable transaction can be the combination of several transactions throughout the day or one specific transaction if they aggregate more than $10,000 in currency and benefit one customer. Some examples include the cashing of a check or a group of checks, deposits, withdrawals, an exchanging of currency, for example, the exchanging of smaller bills for larger ones, a loan payment, or the cashing of savings bonds. For CTR purposes, you must treat multiple transactions occurring on the same business day and for the benefit of a single customer as a single transaction. Remember, a deposit made to a joint account benefits all account holders, not just the person performing the transaction. For example, a husband and wife have a joint account. He comes in and deposits $7,000 in cash to their joint account. On that same business day, she comes in and makes a $5,000 cash deposit to her individual account. You are required to file a CTR reporting the $12,000 in cash that the wife received benefit of that day. Most modern computer systems create reports that help you identify these tricky situations, but regardless, this is an example of a reportable transaction. Now let's work on filling out the form. FinCEN requires financial institutions to electronically file CTR reports through the BSA e-filing system. They no longer permit paper filings mailed in. If you do not have a login to the BSA e-filing system, contact your BSA compliance officer for a login ID and password. The FinCEN CTR contains 4 tabs that represent separate sections of the report. We're going to start at the beginning with the Home tab. This is where you will create a filing name for your report. The filing name can be any name you choose to identify the specific filing. The process for assigning filing names is for the financial institution to decide. Use a naming system that will be easy to understand and track for record keeping and audit or examination purposes. Now we'll move to the Person Information tab. In this section, you're going to identify who's involved in the transaction by completing lines 2 through 22. Don't panic if there's more than one person benefiting from the transaction. For example, if a joint account is involved. You can easily add a second person to the report by clicking the blue plus sign button located at the top of this section. Line 2 can be a little tricky when you have multiple people involved. For example, if you have a joint account transaction where both the individual performing the transaction and the joint account owner benefit, use the Person Conducting Transaction on Own Behalf option, or 2A, for the person actually performing the transaction. Then select 2C, or Person on whose behalf the transaction was conducted, for the other account owners. When completing line 9, or Occupation or Type of Business, you must record the occupation, profession, or type of business you are describing. Use specific descriptions such as doctor, plumber, used car dealership, or truck driver. Do not use general terms such as businessman, merchant, or retailer. If words like self-employed, unemployed, or retired are used, add the current or former profession if available. For example, retired teacher or self-employed building contractor. Remember, a CTR is not a secret. You can inform the customer that you are filling out a CTR and get the information you need to complete the form accurately. Now, when reporting a transaction involving a business or an organizational account, you must report the information on the individual actually performing the transaction, as well as the business or organization itself. The individual performing the transaction should be reported as 2B, or Person Conducting the Transaction for Another, or 2D, courier service if a paid service was used to perform the transaction. 2C, or person on whose behalf the transaction was conducted, should be used when reporting the business or organizational information. There may be situations such as a night drop deposit or an armored car shipment where you don't have the information for some of the required fields describing the persons involved in the transaction. Don't panic, that's what the unknown box is for. On lines 21 and 22, you must enter the total cash deposited or cash withdrawn by the individual or entity listed in Part 1. These amounts can be the result of a single or multiple deposit or withdrawal. Use the plus sign to add additional account numbers if the transaction involved multiple accounts by the same individual or entity. A few tips. Remember, dollar amounts must always be rounded up to the next whole dollar. For example, you have $15,233.01. You must round up to $15,234. If entering an aggregated amount for multiple transactions, add all of the deposits or withdrawals first, then round up the total and enter that amount. For example, you have 3 transactions totaling $12,000.44. You must enter that as $12,001. If you are dealing with a foreign currency transaction, enter the foreign amount in lines 26 or 28. A couple of do's and don'ts. Do round up to the next whole amount, and do not convert the amounts to US dollars. Now the easy part. Identify yourself. Probably the easiest of all sections to complete. Simply complete each line with the pertinent information. A few things to remember. If you are subject to multiple regulators, you must enter the primary regulator for BSA compliance on line 21. You must enter your full legal name of your institution on line 30. A trade name or a DBA can be listed on line 31. After all of the required and applicable information is added, return to the Home tab where you can save your work, check the report for errors, print a copy, or begin the submission process. Get that report filed within 15 days of the transaction date, and you're done. And that's it. Thank you for attending CTR Simplified by Compliance Simplified LLC. Check out more of our easy-to-understand classes, including free training materials, at bankandcucompliance.com.